Tom arrived at his country home at mid-morning on Wednesday. It had been a week since his last visit. His intention was to retrieve a few items and depart. He anticipated that his wife, Peggy, would be at work. He proceeded to the kitchen to prepare coffee and observed the handcuffs and strip of duct tape. The kitchen towel, which had been discarded on the floor after being used to wipe Tom's face, remained in place. The video camera, which had been mounted on a tripod next to the kitchen table, was still in position. The chair, which had been broken and overturned, was still on the floor. Instead of coffee, Tom opened the refrigerator and removed "Where have you been?" Peggy demanded, entering the kitchen. Tom did not look at her or respond. He proceeded past her into the bedroom to gather some clothes, but she grabbed his arm. "I asked you a question," she said angrily. Tom stopped and turned to look at her, the woman he had married 7 years ago. The woman he loved, but now the woman who had devastated him. "Let me go," he said softly. Peg looked at him, there was no expression on his face. Tom's eyes seemed dull and lifeless. She let go of his hand and let him pass. Peg picked up the handcuffs, duct tape, and kitchen towel, then walked over to the trash can and unceremoniously she proceeded to discard the items in the receptacle. She then proceeded to the tripod and unscrewed the mounting bracket, placing the camcorder on the table. She then folded the tripod and placed it adjacent to her. Peggy proceeded to the bedroom. Tom had a large open suitcase on the bed and was packing. Peggy inquired as to his activities. He responded that he was packing and continued another business trip. She inquired, her tone laced with sarcasm. "No," Tom replied, his expression unchanging. "Where are you headed?" "What does it matter?" Peg countered. "You're my husband. I have a right to know." "You relinquished that right last Sunday afternoon," Tom interjected, adding a few more items to the bag and closing it. He proceeded to carry it into the study. The living room set was placed by the door, and then he proceeded to the study. Peggy followed him. He transferred some papers from the desk into his briefcase and closed it. Then, he packed the laptop and power cord into the computer bag. Tom walked over to the kitchen table and picked up the video camera. He opened it and found the SD card still in place. "This is what you recorded on Sunday," Peggy stated, her tone indicating that she was aware of the implications of the act. "It is a souvenir of your payback. I appreciate your thoughtfulness." Tom remained impassive. He then placed the laptop on the table and sat down in front of it. He gestured for Peggy to sit next to him, and once she was seated, he inserted the SD card into the slot. He then stated, "Let's have a look at this," and initiated a conversation. Tom proceeded to start the tape, and the video showed a chair pushed away from the kitchen table on the right and an empty kitchen table on the left. "Welcome home, baby. Come on into the kitchen. I have a surprise I promised you on the phone." Tom appeared on the scene, smiling. Peggy walked up to him, dressed in a short, thin robe, her hair and makeup immaculate, and her feet barefoot. She held the handcuffs in her hand and smiled. "Sit down in the chair," Tom instructed. Peggy complied, sitting down in the chair. Tom Saturday. Peggy proceeded to cuff him, smiling, by squatting behind the chair and inserting one wrist into the cuff, looping the chain through the back of the chair, and then securing the other wrist. She then stepped out of the frame and returned a moment later, covering his mouth with a strip of duct tape. She then proceeded to affix duct tape over his mouth, yet his smile remained visible. She then stood in front of him and lowered her robe to the floor. Tom's eyes widened with delight at the sight before him. She then inquired as to whether he was prepared for his surprise. Tom nodded in response, indicating that he was indeed ready. She then called out, and shortly thereafter, footsteps were heard approaching them. Tom then turned his head in the direction of the sound. At the sound of the approaching footsteps, a man clad in Tom's robe entered the room. Tom's smile was replaced by an expression of shock on his face. "Honey, you remember Joey from my work, don't you?" Peggy proceeded to untie the belt on the robe, which she then pulled off Joey's shoulders and tossed into Tom's lap. Joey was revealed to be naked beneath the robe. He paused the video and regarded Peggy. "Why do you persist in this line of questioning?" "I'm uncertain of your objective," Peggy replied. "Before we were married, I informed you that I would take action if you were unfaithful. What did you understand from that?" Tom was perplexed. Your words were unclear. What did you intend to convey? Sleep with you in revenge and do it right in front of you. You remember that, don't you? Is that what this is all about? This is your retribution. I promised and I delivered. She said, as if the incident was inconsequential. You believe I was unfaithful to you. I know you were unfaithful to me. I will inquire with Peggy when I had any such infidelity. Do not attempt to deceive me. Tom retrieved the SD card from his laptop and placed it in his bag. He then closed the laptop and slipped it into his bag, zipping it up. He turned to face Peggy, demanding that she clarify her statements or face the consequences. Tom was visibly upset, and his tone reflected his frustration. He advised Peggy not to feign innocence while he was away on a business trip, implying that she had been unfaithful. I was on a business trip last week when I received a call from Jerry's wife, Jill. She informed me that you and Jerry had spent the week in bed with a couple of __. Jill told you that she had proof, but I am unsure what form this took. You have already been informed of your actions, so you retaliated by sleeping with me. I did it based on her word alone, without any actual proof. I did not have any concrete evidence to substantiate my actions. Peg, you handcuffed me and engaged in sexual intercourse with a man in my presence, which was highly humiliating. This was all based on what someone told you. In response, I sought retribution. Tom shook his head in disbelief. I am perplexed as to why you did not inform me of your reasons for not discussing the matter with me. It would appear that you have assumed my guilt and deemed me deserving of punishment and have subsequently acted without any evidence whatsoever. Consequently, we are now in a state of parody. I would like to make a few remarks. Please continue. I am listening. I was engaged in a professional conference throughout the entirety of the previous week. Jerry was not in attendance. He was terminated from the musical ensemble 2 months prior for engaging in an extramarital relationship with the administrative assistant at the office. I have not seen nor heard from him since his departure. I was a presenter at the conference. I was seated at a table on stage from 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. Each night throughout the duration of the conference, the proceedings were recorded. Following the conclusion of each day's sessions, the group convened daily until midnight to deliberate and plan for the subsequent day. I have numerous witnesses who can attest to my whereabouts. I remained at the hotel until I departed for the airport at the conclusion of the event. Therefore, your assertion is wholly unsubstantiated. I possess evidence substantiating my whereabouts and activities throughout the entire period. You have only a telephone conversation with an uninvolved individual as evidence. This seems a rather tenuous case. However, I am inclined to believe her. Our beliefs do not necessarily correspond with objective reality. I had previously believed that I was married to an exemplary individual, a paragon of benevolence and affection. However, the events of Sunday have led me to recognize that I am, in fact, married to a woman who is deeply flawed and malevolent. She has demonstrated a profound lack of regard for me, subjecting me to both physical and emotional abuse without any tangible evidence of wrongdoing on my part. Peggy did not respond. I am leaving now, and you will hear from my attorney in the next few days. I am not going to divorce you. That is what this was all about. Now, we are even. Peggy, I did not cheat on you. Were you not listening? I am not an idiot. Of course, I listened. You still believe what you did? I believe I was justified in my actions. If so, then we have nothing further to discuss. However, I would like to know what evidence Jill had. In any case, it is of little consequence at this time. Without further ado, Tom left the house and went to his hotel room, where he burned the video onto 3 DVDs. He had already made an appointment with his attorney and gone to the place where he had initiated the divorce proceedings. He intended to file for divorce on the grounds of adultery. He gave a copy of the DVD to his attorney, who would then be able to confirm the validity and enforceability of the prenuptial agreement. The evidence on the DVD demonstrated that Tom had handed the documents to Peggy at the time of filing. The attorney's suggestions regarding immediate financial matters were implemented by Tom upon his departure from the attorney's office. His cell phone was placed on silent mode, and upon reaching his hotel room, he checked it. The first call from Peggy came in approximately 5 minutes after he left, and there was a 2-hour interval before the next call. Subsequent calls were received at approximately 5-minute intervals. He listened to only one voice message, the first after the 2-hour interval. After a 1-hour break, Tom contacted Jill, who was inebriated. He requested that she call him. Tom deleted all of her calls and voicemails without listening to them and then deleted her text messages and emails. The calls, texts, and emails continued, and he reviewed the numbers as they came in. Additionally, Tom received calls from Peggy's father, mother, and sister were also contacted. Sean's father was called back. "Hey Sean, it's Tom. I know who you are. You're not the only one who can read. What did you do to my daughter?" "I didn't do anything to her except not return her calls." "Oh, damn it, she's hysterical. What is going on, Sean? If you want to know what, you have to talk to Peggy." "What happened?" "You're going to have to talk to Peggy." "I'm talking to you." "Damn it." He was angry. "You're wasting your time. Talk to her." Tom remained calm and civil. "Did you sleep with someone or something?" "Talk to Peggy." "You son of a ___. I should come over there and kick your ass." "Sean, listen to me. If you want to know what happened, to ascertain the truth, one must inquire with Peggy. I am not willing to discuss this with you, Mary, or anyone else. Speak with Peggy. You are indeed guilty of infidelity, are you not? Goodbye, Sean." Tom terminated the call. Sean called back almost immediately, but Tom ignored him. This was followed by a call from Mary, his mother. He deleted their voicemails. Subsequently, he proceeded to dine with colleagues before returning to his room for the night. On Thursday morning, he purchased a new cellular telephone but retained his previous device. He then proceeded to his office and requested an extended leave of absence. Additionally, he provided his new contact information but requested that it not be shared. Upon reaching the far end of town, he rented a modest furnished apartment and signed a 6-month lease. Tom signed a 1-month lease. He went to the grocery store for groceries and household supplies. By the end of the day, he had the house in order. Friday morning, his lawyer called. He met his attorney at the courthouse. He signed the papers and, after filing, was given a copy for Peggy. Her copy did not require a signature. However, the attorney told him to be sure there was an impartial witness to what she was served. Tom called Peggy and they arranged to meet for lunch at a restaurant they frequented. When Peggy arrived, Tom was already waiting for her at a quiet table at the back of the room. She was dressed. Peggy appeared to be in good health when she approached. She embraced him, and when she attempted to kiss him, he merely raised his cheek. It was evident from her expression that she was not satisfied with the outcome. She sat down at the table facing him and said, "Tom, I believe it would be beneficial for us to acknowledge our mistake and move forward. I concur that it is time to move forward." However, Tom declined the waiter's services. Lynn, whom they had known for a considerable period of time, inquired about their beverage preferences. Peggy responded, "I'll have 2 Diet Cokes." Tom then requested that Lynn remain for a moment, extending his hand. He then took the divorce papers and handed them to Peggy. "Peggy, these are the divorce papers. Lynn is my witness that you have been notified." "Thank you, Lynn. That is precisely what I am attempting to do. I am striving to progress, but Tom, I acknowledge that I erred in judgment. Peggy, we have been married for over 7 years. Until Sunday, those years were the most idyllic of my life. I have loved you unconditionally and will continue to do so. Do not discard that love. Tom, our marriage has been, and will continue to be, a great one. However, on Sunday you irreparably damaged it. I made a mistake, and I ask you to recognize that. I ask you to understand what I see when I look at you or when I close my eyes. I see the woman I loved. I see him having her on the table in front of me and telling me I see now that she is pleased with him and that he is a superior lover. This is not the woman I cared for. You killed her that day, Peggy, but it was not an accident. It was deliberate. You did not intend to kill her, you intended to deceive me. I would engage in sexual intercourse in your presence. You were aware of the potential consequences of your actions and even consented to them. I did so with the understanding that it would never come to that. What did I tell you would happen if you were unfaithful to me? Peggy lowered her gaze to the table. You stated that you would initiate divorce proceedings against me. Did you agree to that? Yes, but... Tom presented her with a DVD, indicating that it was a copy of the video in which he had confronted her about her infidelity with Joey. He asserted that their sexual relationship was not an act of infidelity, but rather a form of retribution. Lynn returned with their drinks and took their lunch orders. Peggy argued that engaging in sexual intercourse outside of marriage constituted adultery unless both parties had consented to it. It is regarded as infidelity. We can address this through therapy. Tom, we will seek the guidance of a mental health professional. Peg, this is not a viable option. You have demonstrated a side of yourself that has caused irreparable damage to the woman I loved. You have effectively ended her life, just as if you had severed her heart. Instead, you have torn out my heart. I do not desire a divorce. I will fight you. On Sunday, you exhibited a different aspect of your personality. I, too, possess a different side of myself that you are reluctant to acknowledge. I am capable of becoming as vicious, indifferent, and malevolent as you were on Sunday. I refuse to use a mistake as an excuse. I will assume full responsibility for my actions, a quality that is incongruent with who you are. And you know it. That is interesting. I was pondering the same matter with regard to you. Unfortunately, Tom, this was an error. It was, in fact, a calculated act of vengeance. What did you inform your parents? I informed them that we had a disagreement and that we would resolve it. A dispute about Peggy. He gazed down at the table and said, I informed them that you were having an affair. You did not tell them the truth, as they would not have understood. Perhaps I am finally comprehending this. I recognize that my actions were wrong. I based them on judgment rather than fact. I am aware that I have caused you significant distress, but I believe that we can overcome this obstacle and rebuild our marriage. I am prepared to put this incident behind us. However, I must clarify that the woman I once loved is no longer a part of my life. I will continue to challenge you on every aspect of this matter. I am committed to saving our marriage, but I recognize that it may not be salvageable. I am prepared to take the necessary steps to ensure the dissolution of our marriage. My other side, you will not be pleased with this information. You are bluffing. Do not pursue this course of action. Peggy, obtain legal counsel and request that they review the petition. If you have any questions, you will be single and can engage in sexual relations with Joey as often as you desire within the next 90 days. This has nothing to do with Joey. I apologize for the confusion. I acknowledge that my previous behavior was discourteous and apologize for it. I am not intending to leave you, Peggy. The proposed settlement is fair, and I expect you to accept it and move on. There is no possibility that I will acquiesce to your demands. Lynn brought them food, and Tom handed her his credit card. She walked away and returned a moment later with a check for his signature. Tom signed it, then stood up. He had not touched his food. Enjoy your meal, Peggy, he said. I lost my appetite last Sunday when you spat on me. Tom left and went to his house on Tuesday. Peggy met with her lawyer for the first time. She was a challenging client to represent, and she was recommended by a friend. Please have a seat, Mrs. Given. I'm Ronnie Savage. What can I do for you? I do for you. My husband is attempting to initiate divorce proceedings. Has he served you with the relevant documentation? She inquired last Friday. Please allow me to see the documents, Peggy requested. Ronnie perused the initial page and then inquired as to the veracity of the information presented. Is that factually accurate? He asked. No, there's been a misunderstanding. You engaged in sexual intercourse with an individual other than your husband, she replied. The question of consent is pivotal in this case. Did your husband consent to you having sex with another person? It is not clear from the evidence whether he consented specifically to this person, but he did agree to your having sex in retaliation if he cheated on you. Therefore, your husband did in fact cheat on you and you had revenge sex. This is a matter of both yes and no, Mrs. Given. Could you please clarify the situation further? Please clarify. I did engage in sexual intercourse with the intention of revenge, but subsequently discovered that my husband was not unfaithful. Despite this, I proceeded with the act of revenge. I did engage in sexual intercourse with the intention of revenge, but subsequently discovered that my husband was not unfaithful. Despite this, I proceeded with the act of revenge. I did engage in sexual intercourse with the intention of revenge, but subsequently discovered that my husband was not unfaithful. Despite this, I proceeded with the act of revenge. I did engage in sexual intercourse with the intention of revenge, but subsequently discovered that my husband was not unfaithful. Despite this, I proceeded with the act of revenge. I did engage in sexual intercourse with the intention of revenge, but subsequently discovered that my husband was not unfaithful. Despite this, I proceeded with the act of revenge. I did engage Mrs. Given. I am grateful to finally encounter an individual who recognizes the misstep in your actions. Based on the information you have shared, I am aware that you are currently involved in a romantic relationship with a woman who engaged in sexual intercourse with her husband in response to hearsay evidence. Can you confirm whether there is tangible evidence that you engaged in sexual intercourse with another man? Yes, I restrained him with handcuffs and forced him to watch. The situation is inherently biased, with one party's account being inherently more credible than the other's. Is there any tangible evidence to substantiate his claim? I have a video recording of the entire incident, and I am in possession of a copy. Peggy presented me with the DVD that Tom had given her on Friday. I requested to view it, and she obliged. After watching only a few minutes, she paused it. I will need to view the entire document, but I can do so at a later time. Let me first familiarize myself with the petition. After reviewing a few pages, Ronnie looked up. I note that you have signed a prenuptial agreement, and upon initial review, it appears to be quite comprehensive. With regard to the issue of adultery, should the wording of the complaint be changed to irreconcilable differences, it would be possible to circumvent that particular aspect. However, it seems likely that this will prove challenging, even with the prenuptial agreement that he is offering. Without such an agreement, it is probable that a larger cash payment could be obtained. A significantly larger cash payment is being proposed. I am not interested in a cash payout, nor do I desire a divorce. My preference is to reconcile with my husband. You informed him that I was not interested in a contested divorce. Such proceedings can be financially burdensome for all parties involved. If we engage in counseling, it may prove beneficial. Let us pursue counseling. Furthermore, it would be prudent to inform him that should he decline, we will pursue all available legal avenues. Do you have any evidence of wrongdoing on your husband's part? It would be helpful to know if he has ever been physically abusive or threatened you. He has never raised his voice to me, nor has he ever struck me. I will carefully review the documentation. Please review the video and provide an update within a day or two. Does he have a copy of the DVD? Peggy confirmed that it was Wednesday when Ronnie called her Mrs., given that he has a strong case. The video you recorded is very damaging, and you do not want any judge to see it. Let's begin with what we have discussed thus far. The discussion proceeded with an offer of 6 weeks of family counseling, with the understanding that further measures would be taken if necessary. The following day, Tom's lawyer contacted him to request an appointment. He arrived at the office that afternoon. The lawyers representing both parties have requested 6 weeks of couples counseling. If he declines, they will proceed with their original demands. They are at liberty to contest our proposals. I am opposed to this course of action. What is your opinion? She has enlisted the services of Ronnie Savage, who is regarded as one of the most effective counsel in this field. I am confident that I am the most suitable candidate for the role. Are you prepared to engage in a robust and uncompromising dispute if necessary? That night, Tom contacted Peggy. Peggy, I have reached the point of no return. I previously informed you that engaging in debate with me on this matter will result in the revelation of a facet of my personality that you may find disagreeable. Why are you behaving in this manner? I urge you to reconsider this course of action and return home, Peg. It is unlikely that this will occur. This is your final opportunity to reach a mutually agreeable resolution. I will not contact you further. I am prepared to engage in conflict with you. Tom, I am not interested in pursuing a divorce. Tom terminated the call the following Monday. Peggy filed a counterclaim, citing irreconcilable differences. She sought comprehensive financial and legal remedies. 2 days later, the local school board and the school where Peggy was employed were served with documents alleging relationship violations between their two married educators. Peggy and Joseph Carr were included in the package. The documents included graphic photographs of the couple engaged in sexual activity. 2 individuals engaged in sexual intercourse. An emergency closed-door school board meeting was convened, and both were terminated from their positions that same day. That same day, Joey's wife received a DVD in the mail with the names and phone numbers of those depicted in the video. She contacted Tom after viewing the video. "Hello, this is Tom. Is this Tammy Carr?" "Yes, this is Tammy Carr, Joey's wife. Did you send me that DVD? At my residence, is that you in the chair?" "Yes, and the video is authentic. It is not edited. Is this woman your wife?" "For the time being, I have filed for divorce. That is all I needed to know. I am sorry to have bothered you." Tammy terminated the call. Tammy's subsequent call was to a divorce attorney the following day. Joey called Peggy and reprimanded her for exposing him with her act of revenge. This has cost him his job and possibly his marriage. Peggy did not give up when another week passed and she received no word from Tom from his lawyer. Tom took his next step when Peggy's parents and sister received a copy of the DVD in the mail. After a brief introduction to the video, they began asking Peggy questions and reprimanding her. Tom's old cell phone rang and he answered his sister's call. He was then confronted with the fact that Peggy still loved him. It was, after all, revenge sex. Therefore, she still hasn't told you the truth. What, then, is the truth? "Mandy, I wasn't having an affair. She received a call from a friend who said I did. She took it as truth and, without any proof, this was her revenge." "Tom, Peggy's not that stupid." "Well, ask her yourself. Let her know that if she lets the divorce go through and stops fighting it, that's the end of it. If she keeps going, however, this is merely the beginning. It is incumbent upon you to address this matter. Have you viewed the DVD? This is merely the beginning. I could not process any more information. Observe all of this and then ask yourself if your husband is willing to attempt to reconcile. Would you do that?" "I will, but I still believe you should at least attempt to work it out. Mandy, you have known me since we were children. You know I am not a malevolent individual. Watch the DVD." "I will." Mandy terminated the call approximately an hour later. Subsequently, she contacted him again. "Tom, I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. I understand your position, but I still need to speak with Peggy. I must make it clear that if she stops opposing the divorce, I will consider this to be the end of the matter. However, if she continues to resist, the situation will only deteriorate further. I will convey this message to her." Mandy met with Peggy in person and, upon confirming that Tom's account was accurate, conveyed his warning. Peggy was unwavering in her refusal. Mandy then informed her parents about Peggy was informed of the circumstances surrounding the lawsuit and the advice provided by Tom. Her parents visited her that night and obtained copies of the relevant documents. Sean had a family friend who was an attorney and reviewed the documents, including the prenuptial agreement. The attorney's recommendation was that Peggy follow Tom's advice and proceed with the divorce proceedings. Despite this advice, Peggy remained uncooperative after another week without communication from her attorney. Tom then took the next step. The subsequent action taken by Peggy was to teach Sunday school at the same church where her parents were members. All members of the Women's Auxiliary and the ministers of the church received a flyer by mail that depicted Peggy engaged in sexual intercourse with a man who was not her husband. The caption read, "Should this woman be teaching your children on Sunday?" As a result of this incident, Peggy's parents were treated with greater disdain than as parishioners. After the service, the pastor spoke with them privately to explain why they were being treated this way. He excused them to speak privately and informed them of his decision to revoke Peggy's services, stating that her contributions were no longer desired or welcome. A copy of the flyer was enclosed with the letter. Upon receiving it, Peggy wept but remained steadfast in her refusal to withdraw her counterclaim. She relayed to her lawyer the actions of Tom, which she deemed not criminal. This was evident in the DVD where Peggy asserted Tom that she made the tape for him since it was his property, and thus he could share it with any adult he wanted to. The flyers were sent out anonymously, so without a thorough investigation, they could not be traced back to Tom. Ronnie recommended that she drop her counterclaim. Peggy's family begged her to drop it, as it was now affecting their lives. Sean called Tom and shared his concerns. Tom repeated his demand to Sean, but Peggy a few days later, similar flyers signed only with Peggy's name and contact information were delivered to the neighbors and friends of Peggy. Peggy's phone and email inboxes were flooded with nuisance calls and messages. Her car and driveway were vandalized with trash, and her lawn was also damaged. After waiting another week, Tom posted on her social media accounts. His posts began with innuendos and progressed to photos with blacked-out sections strategically placed in all the days that followed. Peggy Reed received an email from a pornographic website expressing gratitude for the video. When a news crew arrived at her residence, she finally contacted her lawyer and withdrew the countersuit. She requested a meeting with Tom, who agreed on the condition that it be conducted at his attorney's office. They convened a few days later, and Peggy appeared to have lost significant weight and was visibly malnourished. Peggy's appearance also indicated that she was sleep-deprived. Tom said, sitting down at the table across from her, he said, "I've dropped the countersuit." "You won." Peggy replied, "I lost. I lost the woman I loved. I lost my marriage. I lost everything that was important to me. There really is a side of you that I've never seen," Tom continued. "I'm sorry you had to see it," he said. "Tom, I don't know what to say," Peggy replied. "I can't show my face anywhere. I'd have to leave even to get a job. I can't. It would be prudent to remain in this location, given that everyone with whom we have ever had contact treats me as though I were a leper. We have both lost everything, it would seem." "Indeed, Peg, we did." Tom's eyes were on the verge of tears. "I am aware that it is now too late to undo what I have done, but is there anything I can do to rectify my actions besides attempting to alter the course of time?" "I do not believe so." "Peggy," Tom stood up and began to leave. Peggy stood up and held out her arms for one last hug. Tears were shed. Tears were streaming down her cheeks as Tom took a step toward her, then stopped. Tears were running down his own cheeks. "I can't, Peg. I'd feel like I was cheating on the woman I loved," he said. He stood looking at her for a moment, then turned and headed for the door. When his hand touched the doorknob, he turned to her again. "There is one thing that might help," he said. "You could say I'm sorry just once." Tom walked out of the office and out of her life.